clock is ticking toward Major League Baseball's trade deadline, and the hottest buzz around the league once again points straight to the growing connection between the Chicago Cubs front office and the Miami Marlins. The decision-makers at Wrigley Field could be on the verge of making another aggressive move to address the biggest weakness on this roster by targeting veteran workhorse Sandy Alcantara. What we're about to break down isn't just another rumor floating around social media. This is a deep dive into the baseball strategy and financial engineering behind a deal that could reshape the Cubs' postseason outlook. We'll examine the reports coming out of Chicago, revisit the lingering fallout from the Edward Cabrera trade, explain the payroll implications, and most importantly show why Alcantara's pitching profile could be an almost perfect fit for the Cubs' defensive system heading into the most important stretch of the season. The pieces started falling into place publicly when Bruce Levine of 104.3 The Score reported that the Miami Marlins, buried in a brutal 12-game losing streak and staring at a complete collapse in the standings, have officially made Sandy Alcantara available on the trade market. According to those reports, the Cubs have quickly emerged as one of the leading destinations, driven by the glaring need for another frontline starter. The history between these two organizations, however, is anything but smooth. Just last winter, Jed Hoyer shipped top prospect Owen Casey to Miami in exchange for Edward Cabrera, a move that has produced little more than disappointment so far due to injuries and a concerning 5.10 ERA. Before that, Chicago also made serious attempts to acquire Jesus Luzardo, only to see those negotiations collapse after concerns raised by the club's medical staff. Now, a new opportunity has surfaced. At 30 years old, Alcantara has put together a strong bounce-back campaign after an inconsistent 2025 season. He's carrying a 4.01 ERA while once again proving he's one of baseball's most durable starting pitchers. Unlike premium trade targets such as Tarik Skubal or Joe Ryan, whose acquisition would almost certainly require the Cubs to gut the very top of their farm system, Alcantara represents a different kind of opportunity. Chicago's financial strength gives the organization leverage to absorb the remaining money on his contract, potentially lowering the prospect cost and allowing the Cubs to strengthen the major league roster without sacrificing every elite young talent they've spent years developing. If you're a Cubs fan who truly understands the finer details of the game, you need to realize that this move is about much more than simply adding a recognizable name to the roster. This is a tactical fit built specifically for the way this team is designed to play. When you dig into Sandy Alcantara's advanced metrics, you don't see a pitcher obsessed with striking out every hitter after throwing 7 or 8 pitches. You see a master at generating weak contact. His heavy sinker, paired with a 4-seam fastball that touches 98 miles per hour, creates constant discomfort for opposing hitters. Add in a devastating changeup and a well-located cutter, and his entire approach revolves around one thing: getting hitters to pound the ball into the ground. Now picture that in front of the Cubs' defense. Chicago already features one of the best defensive infields in baseball, consistently ranking among the league leaders in defensive runs saved. Put an elite ground ball pitcher in front of that unit, and suddenly you're turning hard-hit balls into routine outs while dramatically reducing the damage caused by power hitters. That's exactly why this fit makes so much baseball sense. Instead of trying to overpower every lineup with strikeouts, Alcantara forces opponents to beat themselves. He keeps the ball in the park, limits dangerous contact, and lets one of baseball's strongest defensive groups do what it does best. We've already seen how successful pitchers like David Peterson have been by relying on movement, command, and inducing weak contact rather than chasing strikeouts every inning. Alcantara has the talent to take that exact blueprint to another level. Surrounded by Chicago's defense, there's every reason to believe he could once again pitch like the Cy Young winner Cubs fans remember. From the business side of Major League Baseball, a trade of this magnitude would send immediate shockwaves through the club's competitive balance tax strategy. The biggest challenge isn't simply the talent heading back to Miami, it's the financial commitment. Unlike a typical rental acquired for a postseason run, Alcantara isn't coming with an expiring contract that disappears once the season ends. His deal includes a club option worth $21 million for next season, making this a commitment that extends well beyond October. By taking on that salary, the Marlins would receive the payroll relief they're desperately looking for as they continue restructuring their roster, while the Cubs could leverage their financial strength as a negotiating advantage. In practical terms, assuming the full contract may actually allow Chicago to protect the very top of its farm system. Instead of paying the highest possible price in elite prospects, the Cubs could use ownership's willingness to spend as the key piece that gets the deal across the finish line. Of course, that strategy isn't without consequences. The finance department would need to adjust payroll projections and long-term cash flow to absorb Alcantara's salary, while still preserving enough flexibility to remain active during future free agent periods. It's a delicate balancing act, but for a large market club like the Cubs, it's one that could make far more sense than sacrificing multiple blue-chip prospects. Behind the scenes and far away from the microphones at those polished press conferences, the atmosphere surrounding this potential deal is much more cautious than the public realizes. Based on everything I've been hearing over the past 48 hours, people with direct ties to the Cubs player evaluation department told me that the shadow of the Edward Cabrera trade still hangs over the front office. There were reportedly intense closed-door discussions about the risk of doing business with Miami once again and potentially burning valuable trade capital on another pitching acquisition. At the same time, however, I've learned that the Cubs analytics department presented an extensive report showing that Alcantara's underlying metrics have been trending in the right direction for months. While the traditional numbers only tell part of the story, the internal data suggests his stuff, command, and overall effectiveness continue to improve as the season progresses. I was also told that the front office has already requested preliminary reports on the Dominican right-hander's shoulder medical history, a clear indication that these discussions have moved well beyond the exploratory stage. From everything I've gathered, ownership has already given baseball operations the financial green light. At this point, the only major question still being debated is the caliber of prospect Chicago is willing to include in the final package, whether that means parting with a Tier 2 prospect or dipping into the Tier 3 group while protecting the organization's elite young talent. From my perspective, this could become the defining test of Jed Hoyer's current philosophy as president of baseball operations. I completely understand why this organization carries some emotional baggage after recent trades with the Marlins. The disappointment surrounding Edward Cabrera is real, and nobody wants to repeat that mistake. But championship organizations can't allow past failures to dictate every future decision. The competitive window in Major League Baseball doesn't stay open forever. Targets like Tarek Skubal or Garrett Crochet would likely cost the Cubs a significant portion of their future. Alcantara, on the other hand, primarily costs money, and for a franchise playing in a market like Chicago, financial resources should never be the limiting factor. When I evaluate this rotation, I don't just see a need for another quality starter. I see a desperate need for a true innings eater, a pitcher who can consistently take the ball every fifth day, pitch deep into games, and prevent the bullpen from being overworked during the stretch run. That $21 million club option next season shouldn't be viewed as a burden. It should be viewed as the fair price of stability for a proven frontline starter who gives this team a chance to win every time he takes the mound. If it were my decision, I'd block out all the outside noise, trust the evaluations from the scouting and analytics departments, and make the trade. Because in my eyes, the risk of standing still and watching this rotation wear down by September is far greater than the financial commitment required to bring Sandy Alcantara to the north side. With the trade deadline rapidly approaching, baseball operations at Wrigley Field are entering full execution mode. If this deal gains momentum, the front office will have to reshape the 40-man roster, creating the necessary space to welcome a pitcher of Sandy Alcantara's caliber. That almost certainly means some difficult conversations are coming, including the possibility of designating fringe bullpen arms for assignment as the roster is reshaped for a postseason push. At the same time, the analytics department will continue running updated wins above replacement projections. measuring not only Alcantara's immediate impact, but also how his club option for next season fits into the organization's long-term roster construction heading toward 2027. Meanwhile, Chicago's baseball operations staff will keep a close eye on the waiver wire, searching for low-profile additions capable of filling any secondary holes created if multiple minor league players are included in the trade package. This is where championship contenders separate themselves from everyone else. The blockbuster move grabs the headlines, but it's often the smaller roster decisions made afterward that determine whether a team is truly built for October. Now the front office meetings are over, and the focus shifts to what really matters: the product on the field. You, the fans who live and breathe every stat, break down every inning, and understand the triumphs and frustrations that come with every decision this organization makes, are looking at what could become the defining moment of the Cubs season. So here's the question: how do you see Sandy Alcantara fitting into this team? Knowing the complicated history between Chicago and Miami, and knowing the Cubs would likely be taking on a $21 million commitment for next season, would you approve of that financial investment if it means building a rotation capable of dominating in October? Now it's your turn to weigh in. Head down to the comments and give me your baseball analysis. Tell me how you would approach this deal, whether you'd make the trade, and if you believe Sandy Alcantara is the missing piece that can help bring another championship back to Wrigley Field. The real Wrigley Report strategy session starts right now in the comments. Fly the W.